Imagine a time when there was no day and no night, no sky, no earth, no stars, and no sun. Everything was covered in absolute silence. A silence so deep that even time itself had no meaning. In that endless void, only one presence existed. God. He was never created. He has no beginning and no end. He is eternal. Before time ever began, he was there. And even when time itself comes to an end, he will still remain. Then a moment came, a moment we now call the beginning of creation. God spoke, with divine authority and unimaginable power. Let there be light. And in that very instant, light burst through the darkness. The universe was filled with brilliance. But this was not just light. It was the very first reflection of God's glory. On the first day, light was separated from darkness. On the second day, God created the sky, a vast and endless expanse, stretching high above the earth. On the third day, dry land appeared. The seas gathered together in their places, and the earth brought forth plants, trees, and every kind of vegetation. On the fourth day, God created the sun, the moon, and the stars. They were placed in the heavens to mark seasons, days, and years. On the fifth day, the skies filled with birds, and the oceans came alive with countless creatures. But the sixth day was different, because on that day, God created his most precious creation, humanity. God took the dust of the earth in his hands. Slowly, carefully, he formed a human body. Then he leaned close and breathed the breath of life into it. And in that moment, the first man came alive. His name was Adam. Life sparkled in his eyes. Within him was the reflection of the image of God. Then God created a beautiful place for Adam, a garden called Eden. It was a place overflowing with beauty, peace, and life. There was no suffering, no sickness, no pain, and no death. Green trees stretched across the land. Crystal clear rivers flowed gently through the garden. Birds filled the air with their songs. And every living creature existed in perfect harmony. God placed Adam in the garden to care for it and watch over it. But after some time, God said, "It is not good for man to be alone." So God caused Adam to fall into a deep sleep. And from Adam's rib, he created a woman. When Adam opened his eyes and saw her for the first time, his heart overflowed with joy. Her name was Eve. Adam and Eve were completely innocent. There was no sin in their hearts. Their thoughts were pure. Their lives were filled with peace. Every day, they walked with God in the garden. They spoke with him. They lived in perfect harmony with their Creator. Heaven's peace had come down to earth. But that peace would not last forever. Because one day, a dark presence entered the Garden of Eden, a dangerous visitor, Satan. Once, he had been a powerful angel in heaven, but pride and rebellion had caused his fall, and now, he wanted to destroy God's creation. So he took the form of a serpent and quietly entered the garden. His eyes fell upon Eve. Slowly, he approached her, and with a cunning voice, he asked, "Did God really say that you must not eat from any tree in the garden?" Eve replied, "We may eat fruit from the trees in the garden, but God told us not to eat from the tree in the middle of the garden. If we do, we will die." Then the serpent spoke, the first lie in human history, "You will not surely die." He continued, "Your eyes will be opened, and you will become like God." Eve looked at the fruit. It seemed beautiful, tempting, desirable. Slowly, she reached out her hand. She took the fruit and ate it. Then she gave it to Adam, and he ate it as well. And in that single moment, everything changed. Innocence was lost. Their eyes were opened. But along with knowledge came shame, fear, and guilt. They suddenly realized they were naked, and they tried to hide themselves. When God walked through the garden, Adam and Eve hid among the trees. For the first time in human history, people were afraid of their own creator. Sin had entered the world, but even in that moment of darkness, God gave humanity a promise. He declared that one day, the offspring of the woman would come and crush the power of the serpent. This was the very first prophecy of the Messiah, and from that moment forward, the greatest story in human history had begun. After Adam and Eve left the Garden of Eden, life on earth began to change. The world was no longer a perfect paradise. Pain, struggle, and death had entered human life. Soon, Adam and Eve had their first children. 2 sons. Their names were Cain and Abel. Cain became a farmer. He worked the soil and grew crops from the earth. Abel became a shepherd. He cared for flocks of sheep. One day, both brothers brought offerings to God. Cain brought fruits from the land, but Abel brought the best lamb from his flock, and God accepted Abel's offering. But Cain's offering was not accepted. Anger began to grow inside Cain's heart. Jealousy burned within him. God warned him, "Sin is waiting at your door, but you must rule over it." But Cain did not listen. One day when the 2 brothers were alone in a field, Cain attacked Abel, and Abel died. For the very first time in human history, blood was spilled. When God asked Cain, "Where is your brother Abel?" Cain answered with arrogance, "I do not know. Am I my brother's keeper?" Because of this crime, Cain became the first murderer in human history. God punished him, and Cain became a wanderer on the earth. But humanity continued to grow. Generations passed. Cities were built. People spread across the land. Yet something terrible was happening. The human heart was becoming darker. Violence filled the earth. Evil thoughts filled the minds of people. Humanity had forgotten God. The Bible tells us that the earth was filled with corruption and violence, and God was deeply grieved. But in the middle of that darkness, there was one man who was different. His name was Noah. Noah was a righteous man. He walked faithfully with God. So God spoke to Noah, "I will send a great flood upon the earth to destroy all life under the heavens, but you must build an ark." God gave Noah very specific instructions. The ark had to be enormous, made of strong wood, with many rooms inside. It was to be covered with pitch to keep the water out. For 120 years, Noah built the ark. People laughed at him. They mocked him. There was no sea nearby. Why build a giant ship? But Noah trusted God. When the ark was finally complete, God told Noah, "Bring your family into the ark, and bring pairs of every kind of animal." Noah obeyed. He entered the ark with his wife, his 3 sons, Shem, Ham, and Japheth, and their wives. 8 people in total. Then something incredible happened. God himself closed the door of the ark. 7 days later, the rain began. The sky opened. Water poured down from the heavens, and fountains of water burst from deep within the earth. Rain fell for 40 days and 40 nights. The waters kept rising. Rivers overflowed. Valleys disappeared. Even the mountains were covered. Everything that breathed, everything that lived on land, perished. Only Noah and those inside the ark survived. For 150 days, the earth was covered in water. Finally, the waters began to recede. The ark came to rest on the mountains of Ararat. Noah released a raven, then he released a dove. At first the dove returned, but later it came back with an olive leaf. It was a sign. The earth was alive again. When Noah and his family stepped out of the ark, the first thing Noah did was build an altar to God. He offered a sacrifice of thanksgiving, and God made a promise to humanity. Never again would the earth be destroyed by a flood. As a sign of that promise, God placed a rainbow in the sky, a symbol of his mercy, and a reminder of his covenant with mankind. From Noah's 3 sons, the nations of the world began again. Human history was starting a new chapter, but God had an even greater plan. One day, through a chosen family, the promised Messiah would come, and the story of that promise was only just beginning. Many years after the Great Flood, humanity began to spread across the earth once again. Nations were forming, cities were growing, but people were slowly turning away from God. In the land of Mesopotamia, there lived a man named Abraham. He lived in a culture filled with idol worship. Yet deep in his heart, Abraham longed to know the true God. One day, God spoke to him. "Leave your country, your people, and your father's house. Go to the land that I will show you. I will make you into a great nation. I will bless you, and through you, all nations of the earth will be blessed." It was an incredible command. Abraham was already 75 years old, yet he chose to trust God. Without knowing the destination, without a map, Abraham left everything behind. He began a journey of faith. Eventually, he arrived in the land of Canaan. There, God repeated his promise. "This land will belong to your descendants." But there was one problem. Abraham and his wife Sarah had no children. Years passed. Still, there was no child. One night, God took Abraham outside. "Look up at the sky," God said. "Count the stars, if you can. Your descendants will be just like them." Abraham believed God, and because of his faith, God considered him righteous. When Abraham was 100 years old and Sarah was 90, a miracle happened. Their promised son was born. His name was Isaac. Isaac became the child of promise. Through him, God's plan for the future would continue. And one day, from Abraham's family line, the promised Messiah would come. Isaac, the promised son of Abraham, eventually grew up and married a woman named Rebekah. For many years, they had no children, but after Isaac prayed to God, Rebekah finally became pregnant. She gave birth to twin sons. Their names were Esau and Jacob. Esau was the older brother. He grew up to become a skilled hunter, strong and adventurous. Jacob was different. He was quiet, thoughtful, and preferred to stay among the tents. One day, Esau returned home exhausted from hunting. Jacob was cooking a pot of stew. Esau was extremely hungry. "Give me some of that stew," he said. But Jacob saw an opportunity. "First, sell me your birthright," Jacob replied. The birthright was very important. It meant leadership of the family and a special blessing from God. But Esau was careless. He said, "I am starving. What good is my birthright if I die?" So Esau sold his birthright for a single meal. Later, with the help of his mother Rebekah, Jacob received his father Isaac's blessing. When Esau discovered this, he became furious. Jacob feared for his life and fled far away. One night during his journey, Jacob stopped to rest. As he slept, he had a remarkable dream. He saw a ladder reaching from earth to heaven. Angels were moving up and down upon it, and above the ladder stood God. God said, "I am the God of your grandfather Abraham, and the God of your father Isaac. The land on which you lie will belong to you and your descendants." Jacob woke up in awe. He realized that God had chosen him. Later, Jacob's name would be changed to Israel. and his 12 sons would become the 12 tribes of Israel. Through this family line, God's promise would continue to unfold. Among Jacob's 12 sons, there was one son whom he loved more than the others. His name was Joseph. Jacob even gave Joseph a special robe, a beautiful coat of many colors. But this special love created jealousy among Joseph's brothers. One night Joseph had a strange dream. In the dream, he saw his brothers' bundles of grain bowing down to his bundle. Later, he had another dream. This time, the sun, the moon, and 11 stars bowed down before him. When Joseph told these dreams to his brothers, their jealousy turned into hatred. One day, when the brothers were far from home tending their flocks, they saw Joseph coming toward them. "This is our chance," they said. At first they planned to kill him, but instead they threw him into a deep pit. Soon after, a group of traders passed by, so the brothers sold Joseph as a slave. He was taken far away, to the land of Egypt. In Egypt, Joseph became a servant in the house of an important officer named Potiphar. Joseph worked faithfully, and everything he did succeeded. But trouble came again. Potiphar's wife falsely accused Joseph. Because of this lie, Joseph was thrown into prison. But even in prison, God was still with him. Joseph had the ability to interpret dreams. One day, Pharaoh, the king of Egypt, had a troubling dream. No one in the kingdom could explain it. Then Joseph was brought before Pharaoh. Joseph explained the dream. Egypt would have 7 years of great abundance. But after that, 7 years of terrible famine would come. Pharaoh was amazed by Joseph's wisdom, so he made Joseph the governor of Egypt. Joseph became the second most powerful man in the land. Years later, when the famine spread across many countries, Joseph's own brothers came to Egypt searching for food. They did not recognize him, but Joseph recognized them. At first he tested them, but finally Joseph revealed the truth. "I am Joseph, your brother." His brothers were terrified, but Joseph forgave them. He said, "You intended to harm me, but God used it for good. He sent me here to save many lives." Through Joseph, God preserved the family of Israel, and the stage was set for the next great chapter in the story of the Bible. Many years passed after Joseph saved Egypt from famine. The family of Israel continued to grow. Soon, the Israelites became a great nation, but a new Pharaoh came to power in Egypt. This Pharaoh did not remember Joseph. Instead, he feared the growing number of Israelites, so he enslaved them. The Israelites were forced to work as slaves, building cities and monuments for Egypt. Their lives became full of suffering. But Pharaoh wanted even more control. He ordered something terrible. Every Hebrew baby boy that was born was to be thrown into the Nile River. But one brave mother refused to give up her child. She hid her baby boy for 3 months. When she could hide him no longer, she placed him in a basket made of reeds and set it gently among the reeds of the Nile River. Soon, Pharaoh's daughter came to the river to bathe. She saw the basket. Inside was the crying baby. Her heart was filled with compassion. She decided to raise the child as her own. She named him Moses. Because, she said, I drew him out of the water. Moses grew up in Pharaoh's palace. He was educated in all the wisdom of Egypt. But he never forgot that he was an Israelite. One day, Moses saw an Egyptian beating a Hebrew slave. Anger filled his heart. Moses struck the Egyptian and killed him. When Pharaoh heard about it, Moses had to flee for his life. He escaped into the wilderness of Midian. There he became a shepherd. 40 years passed. One day, while tending his flock near Mount Horeb, Moses saw something extraordinary. A bush was burning with fire, yet it was not being consumed. Curious, Moses moved closer. Then he heard a voice from the fire. "Moses, Moses." And Moses answered, "Here I am." The voice said, "Do not come any closer. Take off your sandals, for the place where you are standing is holy ground." It was the voice of God. God told Moses that he had seen the suffering of his people in Egypt. and now he had chosen Moses to lead them to freedom. Moses felt afraid. "Who am I," he asked, "that I should go to Pharaoh?" But God replied, "I will be with you." And with that promise, the greatest rescue mission in biblical history was about to begin. Moses returned to Egypt with his brother Aaron. Together they stood before Pharaoh. They delivered God's message, "Let my people go." But Pharaoh refused. So God sent a series of powerful signs upon Egypt. First, the waters of the Nile turned into blood. Then frogs covered the land. After that came gnats and swarms of flies. Livestock across Egypt began to die. Painful boils appeared on people and animals. Then a devastating storm of hail destroyed crops. Locusts followed and consumed what remained. After that, darkness covered the entire land for 3 days. But Pharaoh's heart remained stubborn. Finally, the last plague came, the death of the firstborn. God instructed the Israelites to sacrifice a lamb and place its blood on their doorposts. That night, the angel of death passed through Egypt. Every house without the sign of the lamb lost its firstborn. Even Pharaoh's own son died. Broken with grief, Pharaoh finally gave the command, "Leave Egypt." The Israelites quickly prepared to leave Egypt. Hundreds of thousands of people began their journey. After 430 years of slavery, they were finally free. But soon, Pharaoh changed his mind. He sent his army to chase them. The Israelites found themselves trapped. In front of them was the Red Sea. Behind them was Pharaoh's army. Fear spread among the people. But Moses spoke with confidence, "Do not be afraid. Stand firm and see the deliverance of the Lord." God instructed Moses to stretch out his staff over the sea. A powerful wind began to blow. The waters divided. A path of dry land appeared between towering walls of water. The Israelites walked safely across the sea. When the Egyptian army followed them, the waters returned. The sea closed over Pharaoh's soldiers. The Israelites were saved. After crossing the Red Sea, the Israelites entered the wilderness. The journey was difficult. There was little food and little water, but God provided for them. He sent manna from heaven so they would have bread each day. He brought water from a rock. Eventually, they reached Mount Sinai. There, God called Moses up the mountain. Thunder roared, lightning flashed. A thick cloud covered the peak. Then God gave Moses the 10 Commandments. These laws would guide the people of Israel. They taught them how to honor God and how to live with one another. It was a covenant between God and his people. For many years, the Israelites traveled through the wilderness. At last, they came close to the Promised Land. Moses sent 12 spies to explore the land of Canaan. When the spies returned, most of them were afraid. They said the cities were strong and the people were powerful. Only 2 spies, Joshua and Caleb, trusted God. Because the people doubted, they were forced to wander in the wilderness for 40 years. Eventually, a new generation arose. Before his death, Moses climbed Mount Nebo. From the mountain, God showed him the Promised Land. Though Moses would not enter it himself, the people of Israel would soon cross the Jordan River. Under Joshua's leadership, they would finally step into the land that God had promised long ago.